So let's talk about cost. And I know we're going to be talking ballparks, but if you look at if you're a 500 person SaaS with, operations in, let's say, EC2 Amazon space, you're
Mhm.
probably looking at, from a high quality registrar like Shellman, you're probably looking at 30,000 as a rough approximation of what your first year ISO 27001 audit cost would be, and let's say 15 and 15 in the next 2 years. Using that rough construct, how much will it cost if I'm getting certified to add 27701 to the certification cost ballpark?
Again, it kind of goes back to scope, right? So
Mhm.
as you mentioned, in a SaaS, 500 person organization that does utilize a third party, you're talking, the processor controls are about 18 controls, controller are about 31. So it's about half the cost. So if you think about your role as a processor, it's not going to be as much as if you were a controller.
Okay.
And it also depends on how you want to add it in. So you can do a scope expansion in the middle of your certification year.
Mhm.
So you don't necessarily have to wait until your next surveillance review or recertification. You can actually do a scope expansion in the middle of the year. And then, the other option obviously is to wait until your surveillance or the certification.
Mhm.
But if you're looking at your total initial certification or recertification, the cost to add on a processor is probably going to be somewhere between 10 to 20,000 at the
Gotcha.
most.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I mean,
that's not
and
bad at
again,
all.
a scope expansion may be less because you're really just looking at 27701 and then how that combines with the management system.
Right, but your net cost would end up being more because in your next
Right.
surveillance cycle, you'd poke again at the privacy stuff. Which, while it costs you a little bit more, the nice thing is that it's probably going to be an immature privacy program anyway, and having that secondary look at it's probably a pretty good idea.
The other option for that, though, is a readiness assessment. So you
Mhm.
won't necessarily need to go straight to the scope expansion. You could do a readiness assessment. And I kind of advise on that because there are some controls in there that organizations may not necessarily have thought of before, especially if they don't really have that, mature enough privacy program. So a readiness assessment may be a good idea. And then the other idea is that there are some organizations that are kind of jumping on the scope expansion. So,
Mhm.
you may want to look at doing that if you're trying to get out in the market and kind of ahead of some of your competitors. So that would be one of the reasons you might want to extend the extra cost.
Right. Yeah, the one thing which we're telling clients is that if we're helping them prepare to become certified, that if you can do 27001 and 27701 at the same time, your net cost is going to be a little bit lower because you can touch things once. So
Absolutely.
as an example, the scoping conversations that you would have become scoping and data mapping conversations. That initial risk assessment becomes an initial risk assessment and data privacy impact assessment.
Absolutely.
So you kind of knocking off one bird, two birds, one stone. Chagrined again. There you go. And so you got the two birds, one stone. And then the other thing is that as you're building out your information security policy, information security documentation, that risk assessment becomes a information security and privacy risk assessment.
Right.
So you're building the documentation once. If we do it over a 2-year cycle, what happens is you've got to revisit, have those conversations again, and then you've got to update all the documentation, right? Your statement of applicability, everything through the whole, it cascades through the whole management system. So, so if you can do it at once, if you can do it at once, I think it's the right way to do. Although it gets, honestly, it gets not inexpensive to do that. It's not cheap to become provably secure and privacy compliant.
True. It is a bit of an undertaking for organizations, but like you said, doing it one time it will save you some cost and effort for sure.
Cool. So from my perspective, you did a great job of covering a lot of ground in a short period of time. Is there anything else that you thought we should cover?
I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot of the main questions that we get on ISO 27701. I would just say that if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions. We've also done a lot of webinars on this topic as well that may have answered some different questions that are archived, so you could go take a look.
Yep, I actually was at your webinar. I thought it was quite good.
Thank you.
All right, so let's have a little fun. And I warned you I was going to ask this question, so you better be prepared. So, so I'll allow you to. I always ask amazing or horrible CISO. What fictional character or real person you think would make an amazing or horrible CISO, and why? I'll let you use data privacy officer if you prefer.